Hey, it's Phil Stacey, Executive Sports here at the Salem News. Welcome to another edition of the Salem News Sports Podcast. I'm here, as always, with Assistant Sports Editor Matt Williams and Gloucester Times Sports Editor Nick Giannino. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing well.
What's up?
Good, good. All right, well, we're just about ready for the second weekend of football. So right off the bat, I want to touch on some football news. We're going to get to some other stuff, non-football, later in the show. But for starters, guys, and Nick, let me start with you. What did you learn from the first weekend of football? Something that maybe you didn't know heading into the season?
Well, I thought you had a really, not to spoil, tomorrow's football strip, but a lot of running this week, right? In the past, decade or so, we've seen kind of a change where a lot of teams are going more to the spread and throwing the ball a lot. But in terms of week one, I don't know if that was just teams getting acclimated to the new season and maybe they didn't want to force a lot of things, but a lot of teams were running the ball a lot of quarterbacks were running the ball. I was only out at the one game, Gloucester and Beverly, but just looking at some of the box scores and some of the numbers, it seems like the running game was pretty prominent for a lot of these local teams.
Willie, how about you? Anything that stood out to you about the first weekend of play?
I think really Bishop Fenwick. I mean, you had your crystal ball prediction, predicting a Super Bowl title, and I thought that was pretty bold, all things considered. And then they go out and beat Marblehead somewhat handily. I mean, I know Marblehead had some turnovers, but the rushing yardage that Fenwick put up. I really like their running backs. I mean, I think Dylan Pattarelli is a stud, and they've got some really good bodies behind him. But for them to be able to rush for the amount of yards that they did, up front, I thought Marblehead was going to be pretty big, pretty strong, was going to be tough for them in the trenches, and they just stood right up to them. Now, in Division 5 and in the CCL, you're going to be going against some big physical teams like Bishop Feion and Foxborough and the like. And I think Marblehead's a pretty good amalgamation for those teams. And to see Bishop Fenwick handle Marblehead the way they did really opened my eyes quite a bit. I think I kind of had Marblehead penciled in as the favorite in the NEC done, and I think you maybe have to reevaluate that a little bit. And I certainly think really impressed by what Fenwick was able to do. Last year was kind of a little bit of a shocking upset, Marblehead losing, and especially when they lost a quarterback only by one score. So I assumed Marblehead was going to come in loaded for bear, wanting some revenge. And so for Fenwick to take care of business in even more convincing fashion than they did in 2023, that was the highlight and maybe the biggest surprise of the weekend for me.
I think for me, it might have been the game that you were at last Friday. Was Danvers beating Salem. And I don't think that's so much of a Salem thing where they were coming off of a Super Bowl season, but they lost a ton of pieces. It's more Danvers. When I was over during the preseason practices, you could tell they were very green, a lot of new faces, a lot of young guys in that line, entirely new starting backfield, just greenness all over the place. But they come out and they put together they're up 17-7 at halftime. They build on that by putting in another touchdown in the third quarter. Owen Shanbar, I think the guy they were expecting to step up into that dual threat role, running and receiving. He was able to do that, ran for 100 on the nose, I want to say, right, Willie? 100 yards and a touchdown. Kyle Barkhart, a name that we were not familiar with beforehand. Don't believe he's ever had a varsity carry before. He ran for another 70 yards. The sophomore quarterback, Nate Wise, looked poised running the offense. He was really a game manager from what it looks like. I think he only attempted 4 passes, but he did what he needed to do. He moved the ball on the ground. He ran for 30 yards himself when he had to. And the defense played really, really well, held Salem to, 1 touchdown through 3 quarters, which has scored another one late in the fourth, or I should say in the fourth. But Danvers hangs on for what I thought was a pretty impressive 24-14 win for them. as they get ready for another home game this weekend against Tewksbury. So kudos to the Falcons for a strong start. Okay,
And how
so
about, I was just going to say, how about Masconomet kicking off the Pat Sheehan era with a nice win over Newburyport?
yeah,
Looking at some of those numbers, I mean, Newburyport crushed it through the air, right? That kid had 3 touchdowns, over 230 yards passing, but kind of a bell cow back type day for Jack Fabiano, going over 100 yards on 24 carries. And they were able to pull out a close win against what should be a pretty good opponent, right? Newburyport. So
yeah.
nice start for them. And they're going to have their hands full this week against Billerica.
Okay, so give me now, Willie, 3 quick things that you're looking at this weekend and how they may or may not play out.
3 quick, quick, in what
Just
sense?
thoughts on games this weekend, or matchups, anything like that.
Well, I'm very interested to see what happens with Beverly. You and I were joking off air about the fact that both Beverly and the Patriots could be 2-0 come
Yeah.
Sunday night, which I'm
Yeah.
not sure anybody would have. Too bad we couldn't get a prop bet on DraftKings about that. We'd be swimming in the money at this point. But Haverhill is a tough team. I know their quarterback Farrell did a real number on Beverly last year. Haverhill has not played a game yet. And so that's interesting to me. Some of these teams that haven't played games, Ipswich playing Thursday, for example. How does that line up in the month of September? Teams that have played fewer games versus more games. So very interested to see what happens with Beverly. Marginally interested to see what happens with St. John's Prep. I mean, I know Londonderry, New Hampshire was, I think, in the state final last year, but as we've seen, the Prep has had no problem with LaSalle in recent years. I mean, the football in New Hampshire and Rhode Island doesn't seem to be quite on par. Maybe the Prep needs to play a team from Connecticut or New York instead if they want to get a challenge. So I'm marginally interested in that, but I expect it to look a lot like the LaSalle games. I think St. John's, is going to cruise in that one. And then
Well, let me stop you for a second there. Okay, so we mentioned St. John's. I think, fair or not, I mean, there's 100+ boys on the Prep team, okay? But it seems like most people are focused on one player in particular, and he's a freshman, and he certainly lived up to the hype last week. Chris Vargas, in less than a half of football, completed, I want to say, 9 of 11 passes for 223 yards and a pair of touchdowns. Fair or not that the focus is on this nationally recruited, and I mean at like the highest levels nationally recruited kid, or is it just, hey, everybody wants to see, it doesn't matter if he's a freshman at St. John's or a senior at Hamilton Wenham or whatever, but if it's a national recruit, people want to know about him, people want to hear about him, and that's just the nature of sports fandom, I guess.
I mean, I think if it's a quarterback, people want to know about him. I mean, I watched one of the plays, one of the plays that Barlow, you or I could have made that throw. I mean, it was pretty wide. It was a breakdown in coverage, or if they just lost him or what. But I mean, it was about an 8-yard throw, and Merrick ran the rest of the way completely untouched. I don't know where the safety was, but he wasn't in the same. He wasn't in the town of Danvers. I'll tell you that. Not to take anything away from the kid, but it's I think it's a little bit of a combination of everything that you said. To be honest with you, I mean, you got the St. John's factor. I think everybody wants to know who the quarterback of St. John's is. Going back for as long as I've been at the newspaper, it doesn't matter if it was Tommy Gaudet or or Johnny McCarthy or whoever. I mean, it's a marquee position. It's one of those that's going to matter whether you're a national recruit or whether you're going to go play at Tufts or what. Add to that the recent success that they've had. Add to that the fact that, this has been brewing for a year because people were hearing about, wow, you got to see this 8th grader. He's dominating the JV games. Oh my God, if he could play varsity, if he was allowed, so it's like, it's not even really a surprise because it's been building for so long. His mechanics are incredible. He's a diligent learner.
His size, almost 6'5".
All reports are that he, how can I say this? Like, we're not talking about Shador Sanders here. You know what I mean? Despite all the hype, he from all reports is about as humble and grounded a kid as you're going to find. And that I think is really appealing to a lot of fans out there too. And I'm certain is appealing to his teammates. He does not come in trying to own the place or too big for his britches or anything like that. And that's awesome to see too. So I think it's a combination of all those things. But
And
having
we should
said
make
that,
okay.
I'm more excited to see what it looks like against Central Catholic and CM than it does against some of these early season opponents.
I think it's fair to say too that he is not the only name freshman on this prep roster. There's another receiver that they have who's pretty good too. His brother's a captain at Marblehead, Brady Selvace, but Riley Selvace it comes in, making the varsity as a ninth grader, and he's playing right away. And he wasn't playing in garbage time last week. He caught 5 passes for 48 yards and a touchdown. So, I think projecting him, the coaches feel like he could be somebody really special. Now you have to take into account, as you just said, Willie, it's going to be tougher both for the team and these players as the season goes along when they get into Catholic Conference play. But the early returns on both of these two young guys have been very good.
That's incredible. And it just makes you wonder, like, okay, what's this going to look like 2 years from now, 3 years from now? It's already not fair, the prep playing. How many teams in the state of Massachusetts are capable of staying within 2 touchdowns of St. John's? 2, 3, 4 at the most. And it's already, so like when these kids get that much better, where are they going to have to go to find a competitive game? Florida, Georgia? I mean, they don't want to hear it, but it's true.
All right, you brought up 2 points. Give me one more quick one, and then we'll move to Nick.
I would say just quickly on the out-of-state thing, really interested to see how Salem does up against Brewer. I think their scrimmage last year was a 1-score game. I don't think either team played their ones for all 4 quarters in that one, but, seemed evenly matched. Is probably still evenly matched. Salem needs a win to get some confidence going. And yep. I think I mentioned it last week, kind of reminds me of the Bruins getting away from Boston in 2011 when they went to Lake Placid and then won the Stanley Cup. It's just, you lose a tough game opening week, getting a trip, it might be the best thing for you. Go do some team bonding, get a win, and come back to the Witch City on a little bit of a high.
Nino, Gloucester battled but lost their opener in Beverly last week. Back on the road in Somerville this Friday night. What do you expect to see out of the Fishermen? Again, going back to the wing T offense.
Yeah, well, first of all, looking at the Beverly game, I thought they had their chances in that. They obviously would love to have come out there with a win, but a couple plays here and there, it was a competitive game. In that first half, they kept it close. They got a nice touchdown pass late in the game to put some extra points on the board. So they did some things well, and obviously Beverly's much improved. I think the one thing that stood out for me for Gloucester is they got a lot of young guys. This is a team that had 70 kids come out for the program this year, which is great for them and head coach Dan O'Connor. But a lot of these guys are young, they're raw. I mean, they got 4 junior captains, which kudos to those kids for being noticed by their peers as great leaders and on-field contributors. But that's not every day you see a high school football team have 4 juniors leading them at captain. So they're a young team. They're going to take their bumps, but they're excited for the opportunity to go against Somerville. I think it's a good matchup for them. Somerville put some points on the board in week 1, I think over 30 points. So they definitely have a capable offense. I think they're going to be similar in terms of running the ball a lot. You mentioned the wing T that Gloucester's running, and you were at that game too, Phil. I thought they executed the wing T pretty well. I mean, not a lot of mistakes. They seemed to know where they were, what they were doing. Jalen Severino had that big play capability. He really showed off some of his speed and footwork. I liked what I saw with him, and he saw half the carries. I think he had 11 carries, and Thomas Cribbs had 10, and they complement each other pretty well. I think Cribbs is more of a physical back, and Severino is more those bursts of speed. And if he can get outside and find some room, he's going to do some damage. He finished with over 80 yards. So, I thought it was there were definitely positives to come out of the loss, and I think they'll be ready to go against Somerville. The one piece that they really need to work on, I think, is their line. They're definitely undersized on the line.
I was going to say, yeah, undersized on the
but
line, and I think it's still a work in progress learning the wing T for them. It's especially on those trap and belly plays inside. I think it's all about timing, precision, angles,
yeah.
blocking down low, those kind of things. And I think they're going to get better at that. But that is a work in progress.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. And, speaking with Dan before the season and even after week one, those guys did have experience running the wing T, growing up at the youth level. And I think a lot of them came forward and said, like, hey, we're comfortable in this offense. Like, we feel like we have the personnel that we can execute this. And O'Connor and his staff agreed. So that's why they switched to it. But it's still, despite them having played it in the past, this is a different level. This is the varsity level. And like we mentioned, they still got some younger guys, and it's going to be working out the kinks a little bit. But I see them sticking with that all year. I see them that's going to be their MO. So we'll see if they can improve upon it and hopefully get some decent blocking on the line, despite giving up some size. It's going to be a lot about technique for those guys.
I think for me, one game that you guys didn't mention that I'm curious will be the annual Blydale Cup between Swampscott and Lynn English. Swampscott lost a heartbreaker last week by a single point when they were penalized on the extra point. Fourth quarter touchdown, penalized on the PAT, moved it back, missed it, lost by a point to St. Mary's. Now they're playing an English team that they've done well against in recent years. But just is coming off of a big win over Lawrence last week. So looking to see if the Big Blue can bounce back, get to 1-1, and start moving forward with the victories there. So looking to see how that turns out. All right. I want to switch gears from football to, as Nick, you like to write, football, and specifically Northeastern Conference soccer here. Guys, we've seen right out of the gates here, dominance from the Masconomet girls. Danvers girls are playing very well, Willie. The Masconomet boys are playing very well. The two Masco teams, the team to beat. Nick, I want you to take the boys' side, Willie, the girls' side, or is Masco Danvers really going to determine who wins this title? Let me start with you, Nick, on the boys' side. Yeah,
well, I haven't obviously gotten a look at the Masco boys yet. You saw them play Beverly, who's a pretty good team yesterday, and Masco was up 3-0 most of that game until Beverly put one home late. But the way I look at it is every year it seems like Masco is going to be in the mix for a title. So you go in with the expectation that they're going to be one of the teams to beat, and they look every part like that right now. They're usually pretty balanced. I don't know from what you saw yesterday if you felt like there was one guy that really carried them, or if it was more of a like I said, a balanced offense, because they're putting some goals on the board.
Yeah, no, I didn't see it as a one guy capable of scoring 30 goals. It looked to me like they had 6 or 7 guys that could score 8 to 10 goals. Given the length of the season and long playoff run, that kind of thing. A lot of balance, a lot of kick and run, speed, getting after the ball, really good footwork, especially in tight spaces, I thought. And when they get in that attacking third, I thought that they had that drive for the net, when to push it, when to kind of pull back. Maybe this isn't a great opportunity. How to use each other and their teammates. And as you said, this is against a good Beverly team. I mean, crazy as it sounds, I thought Beverly's 3 fullbacks all played really, really well. The back end in front of their goaltender, Conley. Masconomet is just very good at taking advantage of chances. Is there anybody in the conference, Nick, aside from a Beverly, which I know is already looking forward to the next meeting with them, hoping that they can improve upon the mistakes they made yesterday. But do you see anybody else in the conference that could give Masconomet a tussle, whether it's a PVD or a Marblehead or someone like that?
Yeah, I think Marblehead's pretty exciting. They brought back a lot of their guys. Elmer, we love Elmer. He's been tweeting up a storm with some of their you know, they get film on some of their games, and I've watched some of their clips on kids scoring the ball and spreading the wealth, and they seem to have a good thing going there. I'm not sure that they've lost yet. I'd have to double check that. I think they might have a draw, but they're playing some good soccer. They beat Peabody pretty handily, shut them out yesterday.
But
So
scoreless at the half. PBD played them scoreless, and then
true. Yep. I would
got on
give
track.
credit to Peabody. Give credit to Peabody, but you know, to come away with a shutout win there is pretty good. Peabody's obviously in a much higher division than them, just like Beverly was against Masco. But yeah, I like Marblehead. I think they got a good thing going there. Elmer's been building up that program. They've had some runs to the playoffs, but haven't really been able to get over that hump and win a few games. So yeah, I like what I see from the Magicians. They also beat Andover, another Division I team, early this year. So they could be a threat in that division. I do think you know, Gloucester has some pieces. They obviously lost Gino Tripoli last year, who was their leading scorer, but Wes Silva has stepped up into that striker role and has played really well. They're coming off a tie against Saugus, who's another kind of sleeper team that I think is going to be very competitive this year. But I would say, yeah, those are probably the schools in the NEC that are going to be in the mix come the end of the year. But I give the edge to Masco as it stands.
Willie, are we looking at a 2-team race already in the conference? I mean, I think we both thought that Beverly was pretty solid this year as a team, and Masconomet just put 7 up on them in the first half. I mean, that just doesn't happen, especially in the conference. So, are we really looking at a 2-person race here?
I mean, I would say Marblehead is in the mix. You know, to a degree. You know, played Masco to a 1-goal game in the opener. You know, can kind of beat anybody any given day, but obviously, you know, Masco's closing in on 50 games in a row unbeaten in the regular season and in conference play. So, you know, until somebody beats them, that's where the bullseye's gonna lie. I mean, you know, you don't get a streak like that, you know, and doesn't fall out very easily. I mean, last year beat Danvers 4-2, and one of their ties was against Danvers 2-2. So, you know, that's going to be the challenge: is can any team defend Masco, and can they possess the ball enough to keep Masco from playing on their toes? You know, they have the ball so much that you just can never get settled and never relax. And you know, you lose focus for 1 second and the ball's in the back of the net. They have so many weapons. They graduate, you know, 20 goal scorers, and kids just step up and keep scoring. You know, it's just incredible. But you know, Danvers has Georgia Prouty, who might be the best player in the state. So when you have a singular talent like that, you know, over 180-minute game, anything can happen. That's for sure.
So are they going to be marking her with multiple players and like, okay, if you beat us, you beat us, but we'd rather take our chances with the field, so to speak?
I mean, I think Masco just plays their game. I mean, they're going to be careful, but they have the ball so much that, you know, they just have to watch the counterattack, really, because Georgia's so fast. I mean, she's, you know, if she chooses to run track this spring, she could win the state title in the 400-meter run. That's how fast she is. So it's not so much the marking, because Danvers, and any team really, is going to struggle to sustain an attack against Masco. You really got to worry more about the counterattack, because, you know, then whether that's leaving somebody further back than normal, or you know, trying to take your faster players and kind of just have them ready to run back. And you know, that's one of the strengths of Amanda Schneider up top for Masco. You know, she plays center mid instead of striker, and they thought about moving her to striker because of the weapons that they lost. But she's so valuable getting back. She's so fast getting back that they don't want to take that defensive acumen out of the toolbox. And you know, she's got 7 goals and 4 assists, 11 points, the most of anybody in the area thus far. So obviously, striker or mid, I mean, it really isn't affecting their offensive production at all. They have 23 goals in 4 games. I mean, so you know, whatever they're doing schematically, it's certainly working.
I just
Nick, I
want to
wanted
add,
to ask
Phil,
you,
real
what's that?
quick. Just jumping back to the boys real quick. I think I mentioned Marblehead might have had a draw. They had one loss, and it was to Masco, 2-1. So competitive game. Forgot about that one, but just wanted to mention that. So they might see each other again at some point. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at the schedule, but that one was on the grass at Masco, which we didn't really talk about. But that's an advantage for Masco playing on that grass field. No one else really plays on grass, and they know how to play on it. They've been used to that for a few years now. So it's tough going there to play for sure.
I wanted to ask you, Nick, a field hockey question. Gloucester is replacing all those 10 seniors they had last year, but they've had some decent results early on. And Manchester is flying out of the gate. I think they expected to have a good season, and they've certainly done so thus far.
Yeah, Manchester looks really good. I think they finally had their first loss the other day. I have to double check that. I think it was North Reading, unless I'm mixing that up with the girls' soccer. But Manchester's been really impressive, shutting teams out, scoring a lot of goals. And then Gloucester's only played 2 games. They're at it again today as we speak, Thursday against Malden Catholic. They dropped their first one, close fashion, by 1 goal, and then they came back and they got a win the other day. So, Lauren Riley Grove and her father over there run a great program, and she was excited about the group they had this year. I know they're younger, but they're going to be in the mix, I feel, and obviously challenging themselves with some good out of conference opponents. Like I said, they got Malden Catholic coming up today, so it'd be nice to see Manchester and Gloucester play each other. Again, I'd have to look at the schedule to see if that's in the cards this year, because I think that would be a pretty good matchup. Manchester as a whole is, having a great start to the season across the board on all sports. I caught their boys soccer game the other day. They're 3-0 with all shutout wins. They've looked really good after only getting 4 wins last year. They've almost matched that already with, Sammy Bothwell, the senior striker up top, really doing a lot of damage and drawing a lot of attention for them. So, as a whole, I think Manchester, for such a small school, they really turn out some great athletic programs, and it's nice to see them all get off to a good start this fall.
You were right. North Reading beat Manchester Essex 3-1, I want to say. Yes.
3-1, yeah. So that was their first loss, but they won their first 3 to open the season before that. So
I know, staying in the conference, Beverly's off to a really good start. New head coach for the Panthers in Danielle Hartford, and they've scored 16 goals in 2 games. Peabody and Saugus are probably not competing for a conference title this year, but still, for a team that's had difficulty scoring the last few years, they've gotten, I want to say it's like 9 or 10 different goal scorers already through those 2 games. Ava
Let me
Cannon.
ask you this, Phil. Danvers goes to Peabody and can't put a goal on the board, right? 0-0 tie. So does that tell you that Beverly, I mean, if they scored 9, there's a big discrepancy there. Either Peabody played a heck of a lot better, maybe they were missing some kids or whatever, or maybe Beverly's a real deal, because that opened my eyes, that discrepancy there.
Yeah, I mean, I think Peabody's improved. I did see them play Beverly, and the score was lopsided, but I think that you can tell that they are improving under Jillian Tobin. Sophia Cassis, the goaltender, I thought, again, you give up 9 goals, like, she gave up 6, I think. What are you saying? She played well? Like, she did. She was under constant fire, and she obviously played very well against Danvers. When you look at Danvers, I think this is, I mean, you never want to say rebuilding when it comes to Danvers and field hockey, but they're 0-3-1. I mean, I can't remember the last time they were going into their 5th game. They're playing Swampscott later today as we record this, and that they hadn't had a win. But they had a huge turnover last year. There were seniors on the team, but aside from like Emma Cross, there weren't a whole lot of them. They had a whole lot of run last year. I think they have some promising sophomores, kids like Kyla Maroney and Ava Patch and Addie Moore. But it's going to take a little bit of time for things to coagulate and gel for them. They have 2 goals in 4 games, and both of those came in the same game. So they need to find a way to work a little bit more cohesively and see if they can find a plan that works for them. And You know what? Kristen McCarthy's an excellent coach. I'm sure that she and her staff will find a way to get the best combination out. That makes it take some time, but I don't think that they're going to just bottom out in one season. I just don't think the program is built that way. So
No, I think if you look at it, you know, just I think on paper you sort of agree with what you said, like, well, Beverly, well, Peabody Saugus, you can't read too much into those scores, but when I saw Peabody blank Danvers, I said, well, we got to take Beverly pretty seriously now.
yeah, and the coaches I've talked to within the league agree that Beverly's going to be a player this year in terms of who's going to be gunning for that conference title. Now Masconomet looks to be, they're always strong. They were dethroned last year by Danvers, but I had a chance to see them the other day against what I thought was a very good Swampscott team, and Masconomet prevailed in that one. They lost an opening day to MC, but they've responded with 3-2 win at Gloucester, and then a 3-1 win over Swampscott, the game that I saw. Mia Giuliano, the senior captain, she's off to a good start with 4 goals. The other Mia, sophomore Mia Marks, she's got a goal and a couple of assists. They've got some spread out scoring on this team. Sabrina Caffarelli, is sophomore, has kind of situated herself in goal and has a good defense in front of her with Captain Savannah Stevens and crew. So, I think it's going to be a good race for the titles here. And Nick, I put Gloucester right in that mix too. I think because there was so many graduated players from Danvers, from Gloucester, from Masco last year, the conference might be down a little bit, and there's a chance for a Beverly to come up and really make some noise. I mean, when you look at the seniors that are on that Beverly team, I mentioned David Cannon, but you have like a Juliana O'Connor, you have Elliot Lund, another captain who had a great game the other day. You have Riley Michael, you have Mia Bazin, you have Mary Kapnis, a lot of kids who can play key roles, whether it's in a scoring role, whether it's shutting teams down, whether it's coming in off the bench and giving somebody a breather in the middle of the field. I think it's going to make for a very interesting conference run this fall. I mean, and hey, we're still we're not even mid-September yet, so there's a lot of ball to play there.
Yeah, and Gloucester, their one loss was to Masco, and it was a 3-2 game. So
right.
Expect a lot of
you were up 2-1 in that game.
Yeah, exactly. So expect a lot of competitive games between those teams at the top, or that it should be expected at the top, I should say.
I don't think we have any like super powerhouse teams like in the last 3 or 4 seasons where we had Masco back-to-back years were undefeated, and Danvers last year was a powerhouse, and both those teams have reached the Final Four in recent seasons, the state Final Four. I'm not sure we have that, at least within the conference, but I think it's going to be very competitive and tightly packed, and all of these games, a misstep in September could cost you in late October. Before we head out, guys, anything else that jumps out at you? I'm thinking cross country, I'm thinking volleyball, I'm thinking golf. Just early on observations on any of those sports?
I will say, just from getting the scores from a lot of golf matches, there's some really good players this year that could have some chances to do some nice things in the state tournament. We've had multiple rounds across the board under par for a lot of these local golfers, whether it be from, obviously St. John's Prep. Marblehead is off to a ridiculous start. They got a ton of depth and guys breaking par. One of their guys, I can't think of his name off the top of my head, had a 4 under par round. Was it last week?
Yep.
Which I think is probably a record for that program. I mean, to go 4 under par on 9 holes, I'm sure that kid was itching to keep playing and try and see what he could shoot on 18. But some really talented golfers, and the numbers are really up for the golf teams, which is nice to see.
Willie?
I'll throw out a couple of notes out of the city of Salem. Annie Thornett in volleyball, 20 aces in one match. That's a single match record for the program that stood for over 20 years. 20 aces. I mean, that's a lot of aces in one match. So nice to see Salem going good guns there in volleyball. And we know Annie from the softball field, but she's doing great in volleyball as well. And then the Witches boys cross country won their first meet in a couple of years anyway yesterday. So
Nice.
that was pretty cool. They got Brooks Workman, Rylan Workman, Ollie Simmons, all running strong. I mean, you need 5 guys to score a meet, and for many years they couldn't even get the 5 guys needed to score a meet. But now not only do they have 5, but they were able to get a win. So that's just great to see the growth of the athletic program in general there in Salem. The cross country numbers have been tough, so that's cool to see.
Yeah, and you mentioned not enough players to run to score. That's the case with the Salem girls this year. But I love the fact that Whitney New, the captain for the girls team, is going out there and is already showing what she can do through 2 dual meets. Up there among the leaders in the girls' races both times. You don't have a team around you. Okay, you just go out and do your own thing, and that's great. I think it's terrific that she's doing that, representing her city and her school that way. Sticking with the girls cross country, Willie, I know you checked in with Peabody when we were doing some preseason previews. I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do. I remember, I know they have Ava Buckley and some other seniors back, but they also had those 2 great 8th graders last year with was it Lauren Foley and Fernando's youngest, Ella, that really starred, especially toward the end of last season when they got the chance to perform when Peabody didn't have enough kids to start the year. They came on. They're back. Of course, Marblehead, Mari O'Connor is fantastic. Beverly is always right there under Coach Jellison. So I think the girls cross country in the conference should be pretty good. Not only at the end of the season stuff when we have the conference meet and then the state stuff, but even in the dual meets, I think those will be looking for. Those should be interesting watches too. And with the boys too, I would say the same thing. I mean, Marblehead is pretty talented. They got a great 1-2 punch with Cerruti and Asa. And of course, we think Peabody's going to be right there. And how can you forget Danvers with Rooney, JJ Rooney, and Will Conklin, and they're coming off that Division II state title last year. So we always keep an eye on everything, but it will be an interesting to keep an eye on these mostly Wednesday meets that these guys run. All right, well, that should do it for this week. For Nick Giannino, Matt Williams, I am Phil Stacey. Thanks for tuning in and watching and or listening to us on this week's version of the Salem News Sports Podcast. Be sure to follow each of us on X, formerly known as Twitter, for scores, updates, musings, whatever you want to do. Read and buy your local newspaper, please. And we will talk to you again soon.